Aloha and welcome to Module 17. In this video, we're going to be talking about securing and sharing Windows resources. So this is with part 2, the CompTIA A+ Core 2, 220 to 1102. And the module objectives here are we're going to secure Windows personal computer using Windows tools on the local computer. We're going to share and secure folders, files, and printers on a network. And we're going to support network resources using Active Directory. So first, we're going to start off with the hardware. We're going to go to the BIOS UEFI passwords. So the BIOS/UEFI firmware on the motherboard offers the following power on passwords. You've got both the supervisor, that's going to allow you to change the actual setup itself, and you've got the user password, and that's going to be required to use the system or view the BIOS UEFI setup. So some firmware may also offer a drive lock password, which is required to access the hard drive. It's stored on the hard drive, so it'll still control access to the drive in the event that the drive is removed. And you've got securing Windows user accounts. First of all, you want to create strong passwords. Can't state this enough. There is an annual report that goes out that has the top cracked passwords of the year, and you'll be amazed at how simple those passwords are. Password 123 used to be the big one. I don't know what it is now, but people are going with kitty, puppy, stuff like that. So create strong passwords. That's just the best thing to do. And a strong password shouldn't be easy to guess by humans and computer programs. That goes without saying. A strong password should meet all of the following criteria. And all is kind of a little bit strong here, but use 16 or more characters. Combines upper and lowercase letters, numbers, symbols, and use at least one symbol. Do not use consecutive letters or numbers, adjacent keyboard keys, your sign-in name, and words in any language. And the last one is the most important one of all. Do not use the same password for more than one system. And there's a reason for this, and it doesn't talk about this, but there's something called credential stuffing. And credential stuffing happens when a hacker gets access to a system and he's now got your username and your password. Let's say they get into a system, they're able to, grab let's say it's a Linux system, they get the etc passwords file, they go and they work on it offline, they finally crack everything, and they see what your username and your password is. And they figure, well, let's go out there. They've got an automated list of sites that they're going to go to, and they'll just go and automatically go to all those sites, and they're going to stuff in your credentials. They're going to stuff in your username and your password that you used on that last site that they cracked, and they're going to try it at hundreds, if not thousands of other sites, just hunting and pecking, trying to find other places where you may have used that username and password, and it works. It works amazingly. There's been lots of hacker stories out there of, there was a big one where people were stealing Halo software before it got released to market, and they were able to go to a site that Halo or engineers from the makers of Halo had been working and posting stuff. That site got hacked. They got their credentials, stuffed it in other places, and found backdoors into places. So it was quite amazing what they could get just by doing the credential stuffing. So whatever you do, don't reuse your username and passwords. You can use a password manager, use your Google Chrome password manager if you have to. Just don't be lazy. Don't reuse your passwords and usernames. So next, we're going to be talking about fingerprints, facial recognition, and pins. So Windows Hello is a feature that allows the user to sign into Windows using their face, their iris, their fingerprints, or a pin. And to set up Windows Hello, you can open up the Settings app, select Accounts and Sign In options. And it says you'll also be required to set up a pin, which can be used if your face or fingerprint is not an option. I have a feeling if your face and your fingerprint are not an option, you've got much larger problems than getting that pin number. But just throwing that out there. But yeah, this is a feature that I personally have not used because I haven't done any biometrics in my system. But yeah, this is a nice option to have. So the next thing we can do is use the local group policy editor. So there's the following 3 tools that can be used to control what users and computers can do. You've got the group policy editor, the gpedit.msc. And that works in Active Directory on a Windows domain to control the privileges of computers and users on that domain. Then you've got, for the system level, you've got local group policy editor. That's gpedit.msc. And that's going to contain a subset of policies in group policy that can only be applied to the local computer or local user. And then you've got the local security policy, the secpol.msc, and that contains a subset of policies and local group policy, which can apply only to local computers' Windows security settings. And then the local group policy and local security policy editors are only available with business and professional editions of Windows. So that's going to be on the smaller systems. The larger ones, when you're working in a domain, that's the one we're talking about with the group policy editor that works on active domain. And that's going to be in the enterprise. So here is a picture of the local policy editor. So you can see different, the local policy things that they've got set up in this one. You can see they use this standard editor that they've got for just about anything when you're working with security. When you go in to check your when you're setting up users and everything, they always use these little the MSC things here. So anyways, this is what the local security policy editor looks like. And again, for most of us, that's what we'll be using. If we don't have access to a domain, that's the one that we're going to be looking at, on our local systems to kind of get an idea of what's out there. Then we got the file and folder encryption. In Windows, data at rest encryption can be accomplished using the Windows encrypted file system, just call it EFS for short. And EFS encrypts files and folders stored on the drive using the NTFS file system, and it's available in the business and professional editions of Windows. If a folder is marked for encryption, every file in or copied to that folder is going to be encrypted. You can't do it on a granular level. And then an encrypted file remains encrypted if it's moved to an unencrypted folder as well. So in Explorer, one of the neat things it's you can use to tell them apart is encrypted files and folders are going to be displayed in green by default. So that's kind of convenient. You can tell which ones are encrypted and which ones are not. And here's the way that you go about the encrypting. So you can go and do a right click on your folder and go down to your advanced tab. And then in there, if you go all the way down to the bottom, you'll see encrypt contents to secure data. So you can do that and then click on OK. So then we also have BitLocker encryption. So BitLocker drive encryption encrypts the entire Windows volume or any other volume on the drive and restricts access by requiring 1 or 2 encryption keys. And you've got a mobile version of that you can use on USB flash drives called BitLocker to go. So the 3 ways you can use BitLocker encryption include the following. One is computer authentication. So many computers have a chip on the motherboard called a TPM, a trusted platform module. And this goes back quite a ways. Right now, I think even to use Windows 11, you have to have TPM version 2 on there in hardware. So yeah, a lot of people are upset when they found out their old hardware wouldn't work to go to Windows 11. But anyway, that's another story. But anyhow, in the TPM, it's going to hold your BitLocker encryption keys. And it's also called a startup key. Then the second way is user authentication. For computers that don't have a TPM, the startup key can be stored on a USB drive externally. And then you can also use computer and user authentication. So 2-factor authentication could be used. So classifying user accounts and user groups. Rights or privileges are established when you first create a user account and decide the account type. Privileges can be added on later by changing the user groups to which the account belongs. So that's how you kind of, if they're going to be filling different roles, you can assign them to a group with the permissions and everything that would correspond to that role. So user accounts are created using the user accounts applet in control panel, or you can do it by using the local users and groups utility in the computer management console. So the type of user accounts that are out there, you've got the admin and standard user accounts. And here we go. This is what it looks like when you want to create a new user. This is inside the computer management console. You go down to local users and groups. You click on users, go do a right click, and you can get the new user option. Fill out the information here and click on create. So you've got built-in user groups. You've got the admin, administrators and user groups. You've also got guest groups. And guest groups, they have limited privileges and they're given a temporary profile that's deleted when they log out. Then you've got the power users group. This is kind of a deprecated thing. Older editions offer this group that can read from and write to parts of the system, install apps, and perform limited administrator tasks. That's why it's called the power user. Windows 10 and 11 offer this group, but it's only for backwards compatibility with previous versions of Windows. Then Windows might automatically assign one of these built-in users to user groups to an account. Authenticated user groups, if you've logged in, you're authenticated, so you're going to be in this group. That would be everybody but the guest account. You've got the everyone group, and this includes authenticated plus the guest account because it's everyone, obviously. Then you've got anonymous users, and that's users who have not authenticated on a remote computer. That can be people that are attaching maybe to your iNet. If you're running like a server or something, they're connecting anonymously. That could be the anonymous users there. You also have customized user groups, use Management Console or the local users in Group Console and business and professional editions of Windows to create them using that tool that we just saw in the previous slide. And it's easier to assign permissions to user groups rather than to individual accounts. And that is very true. And that's something you really need as an admin to keep in mind, because when you are thinking about permissions that people should have, really it should correspond to the roles that they have in the system. And for an admin or a backup admin or something like that, you want to assign your permissions according to what functions they, what roles they play within the org. So you can set those permissions on a group and then simply add the user into the group to give them the permissions that they're going to need to perform those roles. So, and you can assign a user to multiple groups, so that's convenient. So they can wear many hats in your organization. So methods to assign permissions to folders and files. There are two general strategies for managing shared folders and files in Windows. You've got work group sharing. That offers better security than a home group. And then you've got domain controlling, which is using the computer that belongs to a domain. All security is going to be managed by the network admin for the entire network. And then some tips on which folders to use to hold shared data. So private data for individuals is best kept in the C/users folder for that user. And then data for all users to share should be placed in the user's public folder. And then for the best security, you want to create a folder that's not in any of those above folders and just assign the permissions to that in its subfolders. So Windows offers two different methods for sharing a folder. You can use share permissions. That grants permissions only to network users and not to local users. And you can apply it to a folder and its contents, but not to individual files. So that's something you need to keep straight there. Or you can go the NTFS route. So you can set NTFS permissions. That only applies to local users and network users. And it applies to both folders and individual files. And it works on NTFS volumes only, obviously, because it's NTFS permissions. And you can configure it with the security tab in the file or folder's property box. So knowledge check, activity 17.1. What hardware component is needed to set up BitLocker encryption so you can authenticate the computer? If we remember, we talked about the TPM, the trusted platform module, and there we go. The TPM chip on the motherboard is needed to set up BitLocker encryption so you can authenticate to the computer. This chip holds the security key that authenticates the computer. So how to share folders and file. User group information, you can get with the GP result command. It's a little bit confusing what they say here. So you want to use the GP result command to pull a list of all groups user belongs to. This is nice to see, when you're trying to figure out problems with people and their permissions or group policies, see, what's going on. So when you're troubleshooting, you can use this command. It listed here, it says GP result / scopes user. So user and the user behind it, there should be a space after the first user and the /. So keep that in mind, because if you don't do that, you're going to get all kinds of errors. It's going to say that user / user is not an option for scope. So go ahead and put that space in there, because user is just defining what scope it's going to be at, and then the /user, and then you put in the username that you're going to be looking up the information on. And it's pretty cool. It tells you like what time the last group policy was applied and things like that. So definitely check this one out. It has a nice little list of all the different groups you belong to. You can use that information to help troubleshoot. So how to use share permissions. For NTFS volumes, use NTFS permissions whenever possible. Follow the following steps. You can open up the properties box for the folder. So you do like a right click, go all the way down to properties. You can select the sharing tab and then click on advanced sharing. And from there, you're going to click on share this folder, and you can click on permissions. You can add permissions to add in new people or groups or whatever, and give them permissions, read, write, and whatnot. So yeah, so you click add, select the users or group box appears, enter your user account. I think you can do a search too. You type in a little bit of their name and hit search, and it'll find those options. Click on the one. And it says also if you want to delete the everyone group, because often if you're wanting to create a share and you're wanting to give it to a certain group or something, if I think it defaults to having everyone in there. So one thing you want to do is remove that everyone before you set the other one, because it really doesn't make any sense to have everyone and the other, because you just, everyone includes whatever you're going to add in there. So yeah, delete everyone and then go into more specific permissions. So supporting and troubleshooting shared folders and files. Follow the steps outlined in the text if you have problems accessing a shared resource. And here's a few tips about managing shared resources and files. Use the advanced permissions settings if you need further control of a user group. Manage the permissions using a parent folder because there's inheritance between parent and subfolders. You can check your effective permissions, see what permissions you actually have. You can also use GP result to look up what groups you're in. You can take ownership of the folder. You can use only one work group if you've got multiple work groups going on there. You can require passwords for all user accounts, and you can also use a map network drive too. And we'll get into map network drives a little bit later. So how to map a network drive or network printer? Later is now. A map drive, also known as a network share, is one of the most powerful and versatile methods of communicating over a network, and they're very convenient. A map drive makes one computer, the client, appear to have a new hard drive, such as an E drive, that is really hard drive space on another host computer. And the client computer creates and saves a shortcut associated with the drive layer that points to the host computer's shared folder or drive. A couple things to keep in mind. You're able to connect to it using different credentials. You can check a checkbox if you want it to be persistent. So in other words, next time you log in, it's going to try to establish that connection. But one thing to keep in mind is if the place that you're connecting to here with your map drive, if it's transient or if it's if it's another computer and that computer's down, when you try to access that drive, let's say it's the E drive or the Z drive or something, when you click on it, it'll kind of hang for a little while, then it'll come back with a message saying, it can't find that resource. That'll be if your resource is down, if your computer is down, or if the network attached storage that you're trying to connect to is not up. So keep that in mind. So hidden network resources and administrator shares. So to protect confidential data from users on the network, you can do the following: disable file and print sharing. If you do that though, the others are not going to be able to access any of your files. One of the things that you can do if you don't want to go that extreme is you can hide a shared folder, and to do that, when you're sharing it, you just add a $sign to the end of the name and that'll be invisible. You can still find it and look for it. It's just that you'll have to know what it is. Then administrator shares are folders that are shared by default that administrator accounts at the domain level can access. So two types of administrative shares are the system root folder and any volume or drive. So if you want to find out what your system root folder is, go into a command prompt, type in echo % system root %. It'll say something like C/Windows. That's usually what it is. And here you can also take a look at the go into the computer management console, and you can look at your shares just by clicking the shared folders section. Click on shares, and then it'll show you all the different types you got in there. You've got your built-in remote admin ones, you've got your built-in administrative shares, your local shares, and your hidden local shares all listed in there. And notice how they have the $sign behind the hidden ones too. So yeah. So over here, we're looking at Active Directory services. So Active Directory is a suite of services and databases provided by Windows servers. It's used to manage the Windows domains, including access to the domain and what users and computers can do in that domain. So the AD incorporates the following 5 groups of services. You've got the ADDS, which is Active Directory Domain Services. You've got ADCS, which is the Active Directory certificate services. You've got ADFS, which is your federated services. And you've got the RMS, which is your rights management, and you've got LDS, which is your lightweight directory services. So AD organizes resources in a top-down hierarchical structure. So users and resources of an organization are organized into what they call a forest, which is the entire enterprise, and it contains a domain. And domains can be organized into organizational units, OUs, and sub-organizational units, which are also called OUs. So an organizational unit is created to make it easier for technicians to assign privileges to users and computers in the organizational unit. So privileges are assigned using policies created by your group policy, and these policies are contained in what are known as group policy objects, GPOs. You'll hear that a lot, GPOs. And here's a graphic of what that looks like. So If you look at the top, you've got two forests there that are separate domains, but you can use AD federation services, trust relationships between the domains to share things. And then within your forest, you've got the domain and you've got different sites. And then those sites can have organizational units, and you can organize people and computers in those organizational units as well. And that's for security purposes. Here's another map, and it's showing you that the group policies apply to the organizational units, and NTFS share permissions are going to be applying to the folders to control the access to those resources in that domain. So now we get into creating and managing user accounts in Active Directory. So you can use one of these methods to access the domain controller. You can sit at the computer. That's the easiest way to do it. Sometimes you're not going to be there. It'll be across town, you're working from home. So you can use remote access via remote desktop. You can also do remote access via Windows Admin Center. And after you've done that, then you get in, you use the server manager, and you create a new user. So follow the steps outlined in the text to create a new user. And here we go. You can see you go down to users, you do a right click, and you can go to new and then down to user. So yeah, now we're back to passwords. We've already talked about this a bit. You always want to require a password for your users. By default, the password you enter must meet the AD's complexity requirements, and you can set the complexity requirements in your group policy editor. So try to set it so it must have 8 lowercase or and uppercase letters, numbers, and symbols. Can't contain any 3 consecutive letters in the username or display name. And you should require the user to change the password next logon. And then notice you can select the account is disabled. And this is good if you're provisioning people in advance. Like let's say you've got you're doing enterprise system admin work, and you've got a vendor that's going to be working with you guys, and you're going to have like say 5 different people. You can go ahead and provision them in advance and just set the account as disabled. Then later on you can you can have them take that out, and they'll be able to use the system. Managing accounts and passwords. An account might get locked out. So the glorious part of being an admin is the day-to-day operational things, and this is something that happens way too much, especially as you get lower, what's the proper way of saying this, users with lower proficiency in computers. You'll get lockouts, and an account might get locked out after too many failed attempts to log in. You can do the following to unlock an account. You can locate the account, right click on it, select properties. In the properties box for the account, select the account tab, check the unlock account. There's a little checkbox there, and click apply, and that'll do it. And then you can also reset a forgotten password. And to do that, you go in, you locate the account, you right click on it and select properties. Then you click on the reset password, and that does your password change for you. And here is an example of unlocking a locked account. You can see we've got the right here, you've got the unlock account checkbox. And yeah, so that's where you're going to go to do that. So tips to help you manage accounts in Active Directory. Disable the guest account. That's often an attack vector. So disable it if you're not really, if you don't have a good demonstrable use for it. You can use logon time restrictions. That helps you do routine maintenance, but it also, if you know that your users are only there 9 to 5 or 8 to 5, go ahead and set login time restrictions so that you don't have people getting in outside of hours. You can do timeout and screen lock, and you can limit how long a session remains before it's remains disconnected before it actually ends. You've got to set strong passwords for the admin password, because again, that's the keys to the kingdom. You don't want an easy to guess password there. And home folders. AD is able to change this home folder location to share it. You can move it to a shared on the network. This is great folder redirection. It's wonderful because that way you can kind of, one thing that happens is people are using their systems. They store a lot of files in local locations, and if they're ever doing an upgrade, it becomes a pain in the butt. You've got to look in all the nooks and crannies to find files and settings that they're going to have. If you redirect the home folder, you're able to basically store those folders off on some kind of a centralized area that you can also set backup policies for. So that's a good thing. You can also set login scripts that do automated things in the background. That's a good thing to do if you've got standardized login scripts that you need to run on all systems. You can also set up multi-factor authentication, and you should do that. And that's going to be implemented with the optional Microsoft Identity Manager, the MIM. So group policy. Group policy can be used on the domain controller to create GPOs, the group policy objects. It contains the policies that apply to an organizational unit, an OU. You can use group policy to manage GPOs, but it's a little bit beyond the scope of what we're going through in the book here. And the book, it does take a quick look at how to create and edit a GPO, but it's not going to go into too much depth there. But it says you can follow the steps outlined in the text to see how to create and edit one. And they have a little example over here of going in there and setting up a group policy, just setting up a new one. But this is really simplistic for what it does. There's all kinds of options and things that you can set inside there. So which policy wins? Well, this is going to be simple. You know, sometimes you got different policies that are going to conflict with each other, and the order in which the policy is applied, the last policy applied wins. So sometimes you look at different, different systems. They have different rules, like most restrictive or most loose or something like this. In this one, the last policy that's applied wins, whether that's the local, the site, domain, OU, or enforced. So here you look at these different ones. The graphic's a little bit hard to understand, but if the last one applied is here, A, then local is going to be the one. If you've got two applied, site policy and a domain policy, then domain policy is going to rule. For this one where you got local or site, again, the site is going to rule because it's last. If you got three of them set down here, the last one, which is enforced, is going to be the one that wins out if there's a conflict. And our final knowledge check. When setting up OUs in a new domain, why might it be useful to put all computers in one OU and all users in another? Let's see, A, it will be easier to inventory computers in the domain. True-ish, but not really a good reason. It will help organize users into user groups. That's not the way you want to do that. An OU must contain either users or computers, but not both. Nope. And then policies generally apply to either computers or users. That's true. The things that you can set in a GPO are particular to usually to either computers or users. So that's why it's good to separate it like that. So I will go with D, and the answer is D. Policies generally apply to either computers or users. It's not often that you'll create a policy that applies to both a computer and a user. So in summary, now that we've ended, we should be able to secure a Windows personal computer using Windows tools on the local computer, should be able to share and secure folders, files, and printers on the network, support network resources using Active Directory. So that's it for Module 17 here. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out, and I will see you in the next lesson. Have a great day.